Hello and welcome back to Major League Talk Giants edition. Today is Monday, April 24th, 2023. My name is Henry and this is episode 8. We're going to be reviewing the series against the New York Mets. However, before we get into that, I do have to make a correction to the manner in which I was reading statistics in the previous series recap episodes. Basically, what I'm referring to is the way that I was reading the strike zone location on the pitcher reports from Baseball Savant. I was reading them as if I was looking at the strike zone from the perspective of the camera and from the pitcher. However, the intention is to read it from the perspective of the batter. So basically, just reverse everything I said before. For example, if I said that someone would pitch in and down to a righty, what it really was meant to be read as is down and out. I apologize for this mistake. It's basically just blindly reading statistics, which is not what this show is really meant to be. I don't know why I waited this long and to really figure that out for myself, but when I was reading some of the reports last week, I started noticing that some of what I was saying wasn't making sense to me in real time. So thank you for being with me as I make some of these mistakes early on and learn from them. So let's go ahead and get into the recap of this series. We got 4 games to go through instead of 3. So let's see how quickly we can get this done, shall we? This is our 7th series of the year. It's our second home stint, and we opened up against the New York Mets. This is not any type of lineup that you want to really kind of just brush off. This is a good team. They are going to be contenders late into the season. Kodai Senga would start it off for them in game 1. Even though we looked as if we tried to mount a small comeback in the 5th, our offense wouldn't strike again. We ended up losing 9 runs to 4. In game 2, a Friday night crowd would witness the Giants get shut out for the first time at home this season. Even with DeSclafani on the mound, the Giants couldn't muster up any offense. Jelly gave up 3 runs in the 9th, and that made the hole even deeper, so we'd lose 7 runs to none. In our 3rd game, Webb would finally get his first win and a quality start. And a beautiful Saturday afternoon game saw the Giants win 7 runs to 4. In the 4th and final game, this one became a nail biter and went back and forth throughout the game. We would finally win 5-4 after getting an RBI off of Yastrzemski, an RBI double, which would score Peterson. Starters for each game were Senga versus Manaya, Lucchesi versus DeSclafani, Peterson versus Webb, and for that final game, it would be McGill versus Ross Stripling. So let's go game by game. Game 1, like I said, our starter on the mound was Manaya, who had a rough and wild outing, and wild is really the appropriate word to use there. Even halfway through about the 2nd or 3rd inning, I heard Krukow describe him as a wild pitcher. After going 3 innings without giving up any runs and only walking 2, Manaya would have a meltdown in the 4th. In this order, he would hit a batter, give up a home run, get a flyout, hit another batter, give up another home run, walk a batter, get a strikeout, and then give up an RBI double. So for anybody that's counting, that's 8 batters faced, 2 outs, 5 runs, 3 hits. He would mercifully be pulled and replaced with Tristan Beck, who would pitch the remainder of the game. Manaya's final line was 3 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and 2 hit by pitches. Our batting lineup was as follows. We had Wade Jr. in left, Estrada at second, Conforto DHing, Davis at third, Yastrzemski in right, Flores at first, Crawford at short, Sable doing the catching, and Wisely in center. Wade Jr. ended up going 1 for 4 with a walk run, and that was off of a home run. Estrada would go 1 for 3. He would also earn a walk and be scored. Conforto went 0 for 3 with a strikeout, but he did earn a walk, and that would end up allowing him to be scored. Davis went 1 for 4 with a strikeout. Yastrzemski went 3 for 4 with a home run. Excuse me, let me double check that. I did not. Yastrzemski singled the center and Estrada scored. So that is not a home run. I apologize for that. He does have an RBI, though. Flores would go 0 for 4. Crawford would go 0 for 3 with a walk. Sable 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts and a home run, solo home run. And then Wisely would go 0 for 4 with a strikeout. So throughout this game, our hitters were 7 for 33 and grand total of 5 strikeouts. So this was our lowest strikeout game. 4 walks, 4 total runs, and 3 home runs. Excuse me, 2 home runs in this one. Like I said, Tristan Beck was our only reliever in this game, and this was his big league debut. He would end up giving up 4 runs on 9 hits. It wasn't a terrible debut, honestly. To start, he got the final out of the disastrous fourth on the first batter he faced and had a 1-2-3 fifth inning. His first run he gave up was on a solo home run from McNeil. In the seventh, he'd give up 3 runs total, though. An Alonso 2 RBI double, and then a McNeil RBI single. His final line for his debut was 5 1/3 innings pitched, 9 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, and a home run. He had a decent debut in reality and managed to help save the bullpen, who truly needed the rest. We would end up leaving 6 on base. We went 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Crawford would ground into a double play, and we turned 2 double plays. He has a good 2-out RBI, and Estrada would steal a base. Now, to kind of look a little bit deeper into this one, let's go to the box score real quick. Yeah, like I said, Wade Jr. and Sable each got home runs in this game. As far as the pitches, Manaea would have 7 first pitch strikes to the 19 batters that he faced, whereas Beck would have 17 first pitch strikes to 25 batters. And then, yeah, Manaea would get 13 called strikes to 9 swinging. Beck would get 22 called strikes to 10 swinging. And like I said, that relief for Beck to come in and save that bullpen is more valuable than I think some of us would want to give credit for. And Manaea just had a rough go of it. That 4th inning was hard to watch. So let's go over the pitcher reports. This time I'll read them correctly. Manaea ended up throwing 88 pitches total in those 3 2/3. So that'd be 35 sinkers, 32 sliders, and 21 changeups. His changeups averaging 84.5, his sinkers 93.5, and then his sliders 84. Now the movement on these, that slider wasn't really doing too much side to side movement. It was dropping a lot. His sinkers were not dropping that much, but they were really coming into a coming into a left-handed batter. And his changeups were dropping more than his sinkers, but were moving over just as much as those sinkers coming into that lefty batter away from a righty. By the way, if anybody wants me to actually read the numbers on some of these movements, the actual inches, just mention that in any comments or anything. I'll start doing that too. Release point, relatively the same. He's got a pretty high release point. Looks like those changeups, though, are a little bit higher at around 6 feet. The strike zone really kind of splashes this way. So what I mean by that is it's going from out and up from a righty to down and in on a righty. See, I read that right that time. 37 pitches in the strike zone, 51 out of the zone. And quite a few of these are pretty wild. Batters would swing at 37 of his pitches and take 51. It looks like a relatively even distribution between all 3 pitches on taking and swinging. He would get 37 balls. That's how many balls he threw. 37 to 22 strikes and 29 contact. So 13 called strikes, 9 swinging strikes, 18 foul tips, 7 hits resulting in outs, and 4 base hits. 7 hard hits. 2 of those were ground balls, 3 of them were line drives, and 2 flies. So there's Manaea for you. Hopefully he shakes off whatever bug he had and has a better outing next time. Tristan Beck would end up throwing 81 pitches in those final 5 1/3 innings. 33 four-seam fastballs, 18 sliders, 18 sweepers, 10 curves, and 2 changeups. So five different pitches that he's got. Curveball 78.9, four-seam fastball coming in at 95, slider 86.8, sweeper 82.8. Four seam kind of comes in on you a little bit if you're a righty. Not much drop, which is what you'd expect there. The changeup comes in a little bit more on a righty and drops about another 12 inches from where that four seam would normally come in. That curveball is going away from you if you're a righty and dropping a lot. The slider and the sweeper have about the same amount of drop. The sweeper will come out more from you if you're a righty than the slider will. All relatively same release point at almost 6 feet for Tristan Beck. It doesn't look like he favors really one side or the other as far as his strike zone. It's kind of up and middle to a little down and away from a righty. By the way, the reason I say from a righty is I'm right-handed, so a lot of my perspective is going to be from a right-hander. He threw 40 pitches in the zone, threw 41 pitches out of the strike zone. Batters would swing at 34 of his pitches and take 47. They would take both of his changeups. Everything else looks to be about an even distribution between the other 4 pitches. He threw 24 balls, 32 total strikes, 22 of which were called, 10 of which were swung on. 25 balls were made. 25 of his pitches resulted in contact, 6 foul tips, 10 hits for outs, and 9 base hits. He would get 11 hard hits. Looks like 5 of which were ground balls, 2 of which were line drives, and 4 of which were fly balls. So, major league debut, you'd expect a lineup like the Mets to be able to hit him, and they did. But he also held them pretty well, I would say, for somebody making a major league debut against a lineup like the Mets. And this is not the easiest lineup to get through. And like I said, only 4 earned runs on 9 hits. Honestly, if Mania had not had that blow up and he had managed to get through innings unscathed, maybe only giving up 1 run, this might not have been that big a deal. Maybe Beck would have only been in long enough to give up 1 or 2 hit runs instead of 4. But we'll never know. We just have to deal with what is instead of speculate on what could have been. I'll leave the speculation to people who are paid way more than I ever will be. As far as our home plate up, it was a man named Rob Drake. I like that name, Drake. Says his overall accuracy is at around 90%. It's saying called 154 of 172 taken pitches correctly. Overall consistency, 92%. It says his overall favor was plus 0.28 runs for the Mets. Impactful missed calls. First one in the top of the 7th, Beck to Vogelbach. No outs, runner on second, a 1-2 count. A strike is called a ball. And I'm looking at where the location is. It's right there on the edge. Vogelbach. This strike zone I'm reading as you're looking at it from the pitcher's perspective. And if it is, then it'd be easy to see how that one could have been missed. Vogelbach's a lefty. This is inside, and the ball is just barely catching that strike zone down and in. Bottom of the 8th, Smith to Flores. No outs, runner on first, 3-0 count. A ball is called a strike, and this one's just way outside. Well, I mean, it's way outside the strike zone. It's pretty obvious if you're looking at it. Top of the 1st, Mania to Canna. No outs, runner on first, 1-0 count. A ball is called a strike. So, called ball accuracy, he's at 94%. 6 of 109 called balls were true strikes, and his called strike accuracy was 81%. 12 of 63 called strikes were true balls. And that kind of gets me into like I've heard a lot of people and their takes on robo umps and whatnot, and I definitely don't want robo umps to be calling the whole game, but I do think that it would be valuable to be able to review some egregious missed calls, like earlier in the season that called strike three on Yastrzemski that was very clearly to God and country a ball. Um, I think that robo umps would be useful in replay scenarios. Set a limit on how many replays you can use for challenging balls and strikes. Don't use it every time, but you know, maybe four, three or four throughout an entire game. I mean, how many times are you watching the game at home and you see a pitch called the wrong way and it's just way too obvious and it's an impactful play? I think maybe three would be good throughout a game. But let's move on to the next game. This one was even rougher. Game two was DeSclafani on the mound. He was 1 out away from having a quality start. Uh, Pretty much there was this dribbler down the line, and I think it was McNeil, and it didn't go down the line. I'm sorry, it wasn't a dribbler. It came off a home plate. It was McNeil going down to first, and I think Bart went to throw the the ball to first and hit McNeil in the back, and the ball went away. And unfortunately, I believe it would be Alonso who would come up and hit a 2-run home run after that. Let me get that play-by-play real quick before we move on from DeSclafani. Yep, the very next pitch, a slider, kind of middle. Mm, mm, sucks. In the end, DeSclafani would give up 4 earned runs, but received no help from the offense. They couldn't muster anything. His final line was 5 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, and 1 home run. Our lineup was Estrada at short, Flores at first, Ruff DHing, Davis at third, VR at second, Yaz at right, Bart doing the catching, Ramos in left, and Wisely in center. Estrada went 1 for 4 with a strikeout. Flores went 1 for 4. Ruff was 1 for 3 with a walk. Davis was 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. VR was 0 for 2 with 2 strikeouts and a walk. Yaz was 0 for 3 with two strikeouts. Bart was 1 for 3. Ramos 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. Wisely 1 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. That puts our total at 5 for 29 and 12 strikeouts and only 1 walk. It was a rough game for the batters, and honestly, it was a little surprising, but you had to tip your cap because this was the Lucchesi start, and that man was coming off having gone almost 2 full years without pitching. He was returning from Tommy John, and I think his final line was like 9 strikeouts. And you just gotta tip your cap to that. Yeah, 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 9 strikeouts. Anybody that misses almost 2 full years and is coming back from Tommy John surgery, your first start back, tip your cap to him. We move on, right? For our pitchers, relieving DeSclafani would be Taylor Rogers. He'd come on for a scoreless 6th inning, 2 groundouts to short and a ground out to third for a 1-2-3 inning. So no runs, hits, walks, strikeouts. Jelly would come on and keep the 7th and 8th innings scoreless, but would dig our hole even deeper in the 9th. And the 7th, Jelly would get 2 strikeouts, give up a single, and then earn another strikeout. And the 8th, he'd get a fly out, line out, and another strikeout. And the 9th, he'd get 2 groundouts, but then the mistakes would start happening. And 2 singles followed by a hit by pitch would load the bases. Then 3 more singles would follow, the first of which was a 2 RBI single, then a 1 RBI single. The last simply loaded the bases. Final out for Jelly was a pop out. His final line was 3 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 runs, no walks, and 4 strikeouts. We left four on base, went 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position. Flores and Davis would ground out into double plays. Flores would do it twice, and Bart earned an error. Yeah, not a hot offensive game for us whatsoever. We only mustered 5 total hits. Dave Sclafani would get 16 first pitch strikes to 24 batters faced. Taylor Rogers 1-3, and Jelly 9-16. Dave Sclafani's pitching report: 80 pitches were thrown, 42 sliders, 15 each of the sinker and four seam fastball, 6 changeups, and 2 knuckle curves. As for speeds, 87.8 on the changeup, 93.5 on that four seamer, 93.9 on the sinker, 87.5 on the slider. As far as the movement, the slider, not that much side to side movement, just some drop. About 6 inches, maybe 9 inches the most on some of those sliders on the movement out from a righty. The knuckle curve had a lot of drop, 6 inches of movement out from a righty from that center line. And then for his changeups, four seamers, and knuckle curves, they were coming in quite a bit to a righty from that center line. The changeup had the most drop, obviously. Relatively same release point for all of those. That strike zone kind of does this almost like a V shape. It's a U shape type thing. From up and out from a righty to down and out to a righty. 43 pitches were in the strike zone to 37 out of the zone. Batters would swing at 35 and take 45. They would take more of the sliders, or excuse me, swing at more of the sliders. Everything else, so about the same distribution. 27 balls to 26 strikes, and 27 pitches were made contact with. Of those strikes, 18 were called and 8 were swinging. He'd get 10 foul tips, 10 hits for outs, and 7 base hits, 10 hard hit balls, 4 grounders, 5 line drives, and a fly. Coming out was Taylor, 8 pitches total, 4 sinkers, 4 sweepers. The sinkers were 93 and the sweepers 78.8. Those sinkers stayed up and would go away from a righty. The sweepers would come down and in to a righty. About the same release point. Like I said, looks like one pitch went way up away from a righty, and then the rest would kind of come about center and then go down and into a righty. He threw 4 pitches in the zone, 4 out of the zone, and 1 is so far out of the zone. It's not even on this graphic. It is pretty far off. Batters would swing at all 4 of the pitches that were in the zone and take the 4 that were very obviously not in the zone. And it's an even distribution of 2 sinkers and 2 sweepers swinging and taken. So 4 balls, 1 foul tip, and 3 hits for outs. And only 1 hard hit, and it was a ground ball. Jelly, like I said, he would finish the game, 51 pitches, 25 sinkers, 26 knuckle curves. Those knuckle curves averaged 86, the sinkers 95.2. Knuckle curves, not a lot of side to side movement, just a lot of downward drop. It's about mid range with what they've got on here as far as their max drop. And then the sinker coming in a lot to a righty, not too much drop. And of course, with him being as tall as he is, his release point is over 6 feet. And then his pitches would come up and in on a righty to down and out, and a lot of those down and outs are the knuckle curves. So even though from the release point it was really a lot of drop and not too much actual movement side to side, I guess that release point sometimes would be a little to the left or to the right, but mainly coming away from a righty. 26 pitches in the strike zone, 25 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 23 and take 28. An even distribution of each pitch there for each one of those. He threw 16 balls and 19 strikes. 11 of those strikes were called. 8 were swung on. They only swung on one sinker for a strike, and they would he would only get one knuckle curve called a strike. So 10 sinkers for called strikes and 7 knuckle curves for swinging strikes. 5 foul tips, 5 hits for outs, 6 base hits, 7 hard hits, 3 of which were ground balls, and 4 of which were line drives. And then the ump behind the mound, or excuse me, the ump behind the dish, Bill Miller. Overall accuracy 94%. He's called 133 of 141 taking pitches correctly. Overall consistency 94%. His overall favor was plus 0.17 runs for the Mets. The impactful missed calls. Bottom of the fourth, Duquesne to Davis, 1 out, bases empty, 2-2 count. A ball is called a strike. Top of the seventh, Jelly to Alonso, 2 outs, runner on first, 0-2 count, ball is called a strike. Bottom of the third, Lucchesi to Wisely, no outs, bases empty, 1-1 count, ball is called a strike. So all the impactful missed calls were balls called strikes. Interesting there. Called ball accuracy, it says he was 100%. None of the 84 called balls were true strikes. And called strike accuracy, 86%. 8 of the 57 called strikes were true balls. So pretty interesting there. But let's move on from this shutout loss. No one likes to reminisce on those too much, but they'll be valuable for the team to examine how we were taken advantage of by a man coming off of Tommy John. Game 3, Webb would be starting. And like I said, he'd finally look like he has returned to form. He earned a win and gave a quality start. And that's not to say that in the other 4 games, he didn't look good with his pitches. He was just making mistakes to the wrong batters. Webb would go 7 full innings for the first time this season on 98 pitches. He would only give up 5 hits and 2 runs, one of which was a home run, walked 1, and struck out 8. Our lineup for this game: Estrada at second, Ruff DHing, Conforto in right, Flores at first, VR at third, Crawford at short, Bart catching, Ramos in center field, and then he'd be replaced with Wisely, and then Wade Jr. in left. Estrada would go 2 for 4 with a strikeout and 2 runs. Ruff would go 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts and 1 RBI. Conforto would go 1 for 4 with a strikeout, an RBI, and a run. Flores would go 1 for 3 with a walk, home run, and would also be scored again after that home run, or other than that home run. VR went 0 for 2 with a walk and an RBI. Crawford was 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts, a home run, and 3 RBIs. Nice 2-run home run in the first, 3-run home run in the first. Bart was 0 for 3 with a strikeout. Ramos was 1 for 2 with a strikeout and a run. And Wisely was 0 for 2. Wade Jr. was 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts and a walk. Rough day there for Wade Jr. That's a total of 7 for 31 for all of our batters with 11 strikeouts, 3 walks. We did score 7 times, so that's nice. As far as our pitching staff, Alexander would come out and pitch the 8th. He'd give up 3 hits and 1 earned run. His inning was a little sloppy. He did earn an error on a bad throw to first. The ball kind of hopped a little high and awkward for Flores to dig it out. He'd get a ground out of fielder's choice and then a fly out after the RBI single, and another ground out, fielder's choice in the inning. Duvall would come on and close out the game. he'd give up 2 hits and 1 run. He'd get a ground out, give up a single, get a strikeout. An RBI single would follow. The runner on first had moved over to second on fielder's indifference. And I'll be honest, my wife and I were driving home when she was kind of keeping me up to date with this game, and she said fielder's indifference. And at first, I thought she said fielder's interference, and I thought it was going to be another catcher's interference. But no, I had to learn that fielder's indifference is really a thing, and all it means is that someone took second, and the fielder didn't even make an attempt, so it doesn't count as a steal. Hey, uh, then a ground out would end the game. We left 5 on base, went 3 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Crawford and Ruff each got a 2-out RBI, so that's cool. Crawford and Flores hit home runs. You love to see that. VR would get caught stealing, and Estrada would successfully steal a base. Alexander would earn our only error. We didn't ground into any double plays. We didn't turn any. And by the way, Crawford's 3-run home run was splash hit number 99. You love to see that. Let's see when the next splash hit is. And I got to tell you, splash hit 100 better come in a game that we're winning. That's all I got to say about that. All right, let's go ahead and get into the pitching reports. Let's look at Webb's. This one's going to be all kinds of sexy. Webb threw 98 pitches, like I said, 50 sinkers, 23 sliders, 20 changeups, and 5 four-seamers. Now, the changeup, 87.2. The four-seamers were 93. The sinkers, 92.6. And those sliders, 84. Now, the movement on these pitches, nothing really stays center line. And I'm guessing the center line is supposed to be with the reference to his release point. And the slider would drop and go away from the righties. About 6 to 12 inches is where it's showing there as far as the movement sideways. His four-seamers, pretty much like a four-seamer should, doesn't have a lot of drop. Does come in about 6 to, it's more like about 9 inches to a righty. And then those sinkers have a little bit more drop, a lot more movement toward a right-handed batter, and those changeups, the most drop that he's got. But as far as their sideways motion, they're coming into a righty, but they average about the same amount of inward movement to a righty that is four-seamers do, which makes sense. Release point, about the same. As far as the spray pattern across the strike zone, it's kind of starting up and in to a righty to down and out from a righty. He threw 49 pitches in the strike zone, 49 out of the strike zone. Look at that. That's 50-50 there. That's pretty cool. Batters would swing at 38 of his pitches and take 60. They took all of his four-seamers. And yeah, looking at that, none of his four-seamers were anywhere near the strike zone. So that makes sense. And then they would take more of the sliders than they would swing at. 35 balls, all of those four-seamers were balls. 32 strikes, 25 of which were called, 7 of which were swinging strikes. 30 of his pitches were for contact, 15 foul tips, 11 hits for outs, and only 5 base hits. 6 hard hits, 4 of which were grounders, 2 of which were fly balls. Love to see that. Alexander would come in, 14 pitches. They were all sinkers, which means they all averaged about 93.6. Going away from righties. Relatively same release point. Now, while that movement says it's supposed to be away from righties, he was actually hitting the zone pretty well. So like I said, I think that movement may be from the release point, relative to that release point. Not too much in or out as far as the actual placement. Some did miss the strike zone, but not by an excessive amount. 5 pitches in the zone, 9 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 9 of them and take 5. 5 balls, 3 foul tips, 3 hits for outs, and 3 base hits. Only 2 hard hits, and they were grounders. And then you get Duvall coming in. He throws 23 pitches for his inning. 11 sinkers, 6 cutters, 6 sliders. Those cutters 99.6, the sinkers 97.3, the sliders 88.3. Those sliders doesn't seem to be a lot of lateral movement, a lot of drop though. Sinkers pretty decent amount of drop. The movement looks more like it's coming into, or at least it should be coming into a righty, and that cutter, not much drop, just a little bit of inside motion movement to a righty. But you do have a couple of balls that would miss low and out from a righty, and one cutter would miss middle and into a righty, and then up and middle. So 16 pitches in the zone, 7 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 10 of his pitches and take 13. They would only swing at 1 of his cutters. So 6 balls, 8 strikes, 7 called, 1 swinging, 9 pitches for contact, 5 foul tips, 2 hits for outs, and 2 base hits. Only 2 hard hits, 1 ground ball, 1 line drive. And our behind home plate, Chad Whitson is his name. Overall accuracy of 95%, overall consistency of 95%, overall favorite plus 0.27 runs for the Giants. Impactful missed calls. This one looks like another one where all the impactful missed calls were balls called strikes. Top of the second, Webb to Alonso. No outs, bases empty, a 2-1 count. Ball is called a strike. Top of the second, Webb to Beatty. 2 outs, runner on second. 2-1 count. Ball is called a strike. And then bottom of the fifth, Peterson to Bart. 2 outs, bases empty, 3-1 count. Ball is called a strike. So his called ball accuracy was 99%. 1 of 101 called balls were true strikes, and his called strike accuracy was 87%. 7 of 54 called strikes were true balls. So another game where the top 3 impactful missed calls were balls called strikes. So that's relatively interesting. So yeah, this was nice to get that win against the Mets. Like I said, this was going to be a pretty hard stretch coming up here. I think I did say in the last episode that a realistic and a reasonable expectation would be going 500 through the Mets, Cardinals, and Padres. Ended up winning 7-4 in that third game on Saturday, and then we move into Sunday, where Ross Stripling would get his second start of the season. I almost forgot that he did have a start in New York. And if he can shake off whatever's been plaguing him for this start to the season, he could really become a more permanent role in that starting rotation. This outing wasn't outstanding, but it was not his worst that we've seen either. He would go 3 1/3 innings, giving up 6 hits, walk 1. He'd only get 1 strikeout, and he'd allow 2 earned runs, but he'd be credited for 3 total runs. He did manage to get out of a bases loaded situation with an inning-ending double play in the second. However, he would be pulled after getting worked to another bases loaded situation in the fourth. He'd get the bases loaded. He'd face 1 batter right after that, get the 1 strikeout of the game for himself, and then he'd be pulled. So hopefully he starts working through some more of whatever funk he's really in. Our lineup, Wade Jr. was at first, and then he moved to left. Conforto was in right, Davis over at third. Peterson was at DH. Yastrzemski was in left, and then he moved to center. Estrada was at second. Crawford at short. Sable doing the catching to start, but then Flores, who would come into pinch hit and then move to first base, would take his spot in the batting order. And then Wisely, who was playing center, would be replaced with Ruff, who would come into pinch hit, and then Bart would come in to do the catching. Wade Jr. went 2 for 4 with a run. Conforto was 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts and a walk. Davis was 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. Peterson was 1 for 3 with a walk and a run, and also an RBI. Yastrzemski was 2 for 4 with an RBI. Estrada was 1 for 3 with a strikeout, a home run, and another run. Crawford was 1 for 4 with a strikeout and a run. Sable was 1 for 2 with a strikeout. And then Flores, who would come in for him, was 0 for 2 with a strikeout. Wisely was 0 for 2 with a strikeout and an RBI. Ruff was 0 for 1 with a strikeout. So total 8 for 31, another double digit strikeout, 10 strikeouts, 2 walks, 5 runs. So let's get into the rest of the pitchers. Taylor Rogers would be the first pitcher out of the pen to relieve Stripling, and he would inherit a bases loaded situation, finish the 4th inning, striking out 1. 2 sac flies were hit off of Rogers, with only one of them resulting in an out due to an error by Conforto, who failed to catch a ball hit to right by Canna. That would score McNeil. Taylor's twin Tyler would pitch the 5th and 6th innings, striking out 4, giving only 2 hits, one of which was a home run that was about 6 inches above the strike zone. It was ridiculous. That home run would be the only run Tyler would allow. Brevia would then come on for the 7th. He'd strike out 2 and retire the side in order. Scott Alexander would pitch the 8th, giving up no hits, runs, or walks, and getting 3 straight ground outs. And then Duvall would come in and finish the game, and this time he would have no drama. It'd be a drama-free 9th inning for Duvall. He'd be handed a 1-run lead thanks to Yaz hitting an RBI double in the bottom of the 8th, miraculously scoring Peterson all the way from first. That man came around 3rd on a mission, and that was probably the funniest slide you're ever going to see. Duvall would strike out the first 2 batters, and then a ground out to Crawford would end the game, giving the Giants their first back-to-back wins. Giants hitters stranded 6 on base and hit 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Peterson had the only 2-out RBI of the game for the Giants. Davis is the only Giant to ground into a double play. Crawford would steal a base, and we returned 1 double play. We earned 2 errors. Stripling, when he overran a ball that dribbled toward first, and Conforto fielding a fly ball in right. Now, real quick, while we're talking about those, actually, I will come back to errors later. Got a fun fact on errors to give at the end of the show. Looking at this game, like I said, it kind of went back and forth. If you look at the scoring plays, 1st inning, Peterson singles to right. 2nd inning, Estrada homers. 3rd inning, Lindor doubles. 4th inning, Canna hits a sac fly. 4th inning, Nimmo hits a sac fly. 4th inning, Sable singles. 4th inning, Wisely grounded to score to score Crawford. 6th inning, Alvarez homers. 8th inning, Yastrzemski doubles. I mean, it went back to back. I mean, we went up first 2-0, then they would come back 2-1. Then they take the lead in the 4th, 3-2. Then we'd tie it up in the 4th and then go ahead 4-3. Then they tie it back up in the 6th. And finally in the 8th, we managed to get that 1 run we would need. And it would be all Duvall would need to close out the game for us. So pretty much a nail biter if you were watching it there. It's nice to see that we can go back and forth with a team that has started their season at 14-9. So it gives us some hope and some faith that we can have better games down the stretch for sure. First pitch strikes to batter's face. Stripling would get 12 first pitch strikes to 17 batter's face, which is that's good. Alexander 1-3, Taylor Rogers 2-3, Tyler Rogers 7-8, Brevia 1-3, and Duvall 2-3. Let's go ahead and get into these pitching reports. Ross Stripling with those 67 pitches, 19 four-seamers, 18 changeups, 18 sliders, 9 knuckle curves, and 3 sinkers. Those changeups averaged 84.5. The four-seamers averaged 91.8, almost 92. Knuckle curves 76.4. Those sinkers 91.9, and the sliders 87.2. As far as the movement, his knuckle curve had the most drop, Nothing really was going away from righties as far as relative to the center line. But there were some pitches that would come in a little bit to righties. Relatively same release point. His release point is above 6 feet. His actual spray across the strike zone, it doesn't look like he favors going in or out when it comes to missing low. A lot of it kind of does stay relatively top to bottom. Nothing like missing too wildly in or out. He threw 36 pitches in the strike zone, 31 pitches out of the strike zone. Batters would swing at 26 of his pitches and take 41. It looks like it's a pretty decent distribution between all those different pitches. He would throw 23 balls, 21 strikes, 18 of which were called, 3 of which were swinging strikes, and 23 of his pitches were made contact with, 8 foul tips, 8 hits for outs, and 7 base hits, and 9 hard hits on Stripling, 3 ground balls, 4 line drives, and 2 fly balls. So he's got a bit of work to do. And like I said, hopefully he can work with our training staff and really start figuring things out for himself. Yeah. Taylor Rogers would come in for 12 pitches, 9 sweepers, 2 sinkers, and a cutter. Those sweepers are 80.2. That the cutter was like maybe 87, and the sinkers were like 92 maybe. The movement, cutter really didn't have much side to side movement, just a little drop. The sweeper was coming in, the sinker was going out. You look at the spray chart, things that would miss down were also into a righty. 6 pitches in the zone, 6 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 7 of his pitches and take 5. They took that one cutter, 3 balls, 1 of each pitch, 2 called strikes, 2 swinging strikes, 3 foul tips, and 2 base hits. Nothing hit hard for him. His brother would come in and pitch 20 pitches, 12 four-seamers, 8 sliders. We know the funky man, 82.3 on his four-seamer, 72.1 on the slider. His slider, it's interesting trying to read his movement chart, and this data source says it's all StatCast. This is Baseball Savant, so his strike zone, if he missed, so like some of what he missed would be going away from a righty, and then he'd really kind of hit this inside line in between the strike zone and the right-handed batter just a little bit there. And like say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pitches were right in that little area. 10 pitches in the zone, 10 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 12 of his pitches and take 8. They only took 1 slider. 2 balls, both of them four seamers, 6 called strikes, 2 swinging strikes, 6 foul tips, 2 hits for outs, 2 base hits. So the 2 hits for outs, 2 base hits, that was 1 slider in each and 1 four seamer in each. The called strikes, 5 of them were four seamers, 1 of them was a slider. And they would foul off 4 sliders to 2 four seamers. And only 1 hard hit. And that was a fly ball. And that was a home run. Yeah, that missed way up in that out of the strike zone, but he went up there for it. Brebbia, 14 pitches, 9 sliders, 5 four seamers. Four seamers 96.1, the sliders 83.6. The movement with reference to that center line. Sliders, a lot of drop and away from the righties. Four seamers, not much drop, but would come into a righty. Looking at the strike zone, it was the sliders that would go down and out from a righty. He threw 7 pitches in the zone, 7 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 6 of his pitches and take 8. About an even distribution between the 2 pitches. 5 balls, 6 strikes, 3 of which were called, 3 were swinging, 2 foul tips, and 1 hit for an out. No hard hits for Brevia. Alexander would throw 9 pitches, all of which were sinkers, and averaging 92.8 miles an hour. Not a lot of drop. It says about 30 inches of drop, maybe at the most. And they would be going away from a righty with reference to the center line of where it was released. But he did have quite a few pitches actually into a righty based on this strike zone graphic. 1 pitch would miss away from the righty quite a bit. He threw 4 pitches in the zone, 5 pitches out of the zone. Batters would swing at 4 and take 5. 4 balls, 1 called strike, 1 foul tip, and 3 hits for outs. 2 hard hits. They were ground balls. And then Duvall would come in and throw only 9 pitches, 4 sinkers, 3 cutters, 2 sliders. That cutter coming in at 100.3, sinkers at 97. That sinker had more movement to the right if it's coming at you. So to the right, coming at you, coming into a righty. The slider had the most drop. He did miss away from righties. He didn't really miss anything into a righty. Everything was out from a righty. 7 pitches in the strike zone, and then 2 were out. And like I said, those were way out and away from a righty. The looks like it's 1 sinker that's way down and out, then 1 cutter that was more middle, so probably like right around stomach level, and then out from a righty. Batters would swing at 5 of his pitches and take 4. 2 balls. One of those was a slider, one was a cutter. 2 called strikes, both those are sinkers. 2 swinging strikes, 1 cutter, 1 slider. 2 foul tips, a sinker and a cutter, and 1 hit for an out, a sinker. And that was a ground ball. And then our ump behind the plate, Roberto Ortiz. 93% overall accuracy, called 143 of 154. Taking pitches correctly, overall consistency, 91%. Overall favor, plus 0.73 runs for San Francisco. Impactful miscalls. Top of the second, Stripling to Alvarez, 1 out, bases loaded, 2-1 count. A ball is called a strike. Oh, dear Lord. That's 3 straight games where the 3 top impactful missed calls, which they define as the largest changes in run expectancy, were all ball called strikes. So top of the second, Stripling to Alvarez, 1 out, bases loaded, 2-1 count, ball called a strike. Bottom of the first, Miguel to Conforto, no outs, runner on first, 1-0 count, ball is called a strike. Top of the fourth, Stripling to Alvarez, no outs, bases loaded, 0-0 count, ball is called a strike. Now that's pretty interesting. Called ball accuracy, 96%. 4 of 98 called balls are true strikes. Called strike accuracy, 88%. 7 of 56 called strikes are true balls. So now let me get back to what I wanted to say on errors real quick before I fully sum up everything. I was reading an article in The Athletic, I believe it was by Andrew Baggerly, and he pointed this out, that if you ignore the errors made by pitchers, catchers, and Brandon Crawford, the Giants' error count is 5. So that means 5 errors that the rest of the defense are responsible for. Brandon Crawford has 4 errors this year. Catchers have 3 for catcher's interference, and pitchers are responsible for 5. So if you include Crawford's, that's 9. That's still like you don't want to see an error game, but we were worse last year. So this 4-game series puts us at 8-13. That's still good for fourth in the West, ahead of only Colorado, who has a record of 6-17. That's 3 games out from first, by the way. Arizona and the Dodgers are tied at 12-11 apiece. We finally won 2 games in a row. Look at that. There's a streak. You like to see that, don't you? Our batting lineups are now 171 for 725 with 33 home runs. That's still good for second in the West. 226 strikeouts now. That's still good for dead last in the NL. By the way, those home runs, for some reason, I'm hearing myself saying it was still good for second in the NL West. It's still good for second in the NL total. We've drawn 73 walks. That's good for ninth in the NL. We've stolen 11 bases. That's 11th in the NL. We've been caught stealing 3 times, which is third. Our team is slashing 236, 317, 412, which is a drop from the last episode again for all of those, with an OPS of 730. That's all good for 12th, 9th, 8th, and 9th in the NL respectively. Pitching staff has a combined ERA of 4.44 at this point, giving up 193 hits and being credited with 93 earned runs, 109 total runs. Pitchers have given up 29 home runs, which is 12th in the NL. They have walked 54, which is good enough to lead the NL. Pitchers have struck out 199, which is 5th in the NL. They are 7th in earned runs and 10th in hits and 10th in ERA. Pitching staff's FIP is 4.22 and WHIP is 1.309. Sean Jelly now has the highest WHIP at 1.909. Taylor Rogers, who had the highest last episode, he's dropped from that 2.357 to 1.737. So that's pretty cool to see him improve. The highest FIP still does belong to Taylor Rogers, though. It has dropped from 9.49, or it's dropped to 9.49 from the 12.11 that it was before. And it was almost 16 the episode before that. Hits per 9 is now Tristan Beck at 15.2, who had just made his MLB debut. Another thing, we've given up a lot of home runs this season so far. I mean, we're only 21 games in, and our pitching staff has given up 29 home runs. And I read there's another athletic article talking about that. And we can either just be down and out about it. I mean, we were one of the best pitching staffs at keeping the ball in the park the last couple of years. But if you dig deeper into that, we were only average at reining in those home runs in other parks. We were better at it in our own park. We're better at keeping that ball in the park at Oracle. And so you look at some of the other teams that have given up home runs, and there are teams that are at the top right now in win percentage that have given up a lot of home runs as well. And you look at other Giants teams that have given up a lot of home runs to start the season. And if I'm remembering this right, there was the 2000 season where we would end up being at the top of the NL West, I believe. So that to say, we still have a lot ahead of us. And hopefully after this split with the Mets, we can go in and take on a struggling Cardinals and start to turn our things around, turn ourselves around. We should be getting Slater and Haniger back this week, so that should help us out against lefties. But the short schedule's not getting much easier. We got 4 against the Cardinals, we got 2 against the Padres, and we go to Houston for 3, and then we come back to San Francisco and play the Brewers for 3, and then the Nationals for 3. After the Nationals, it's the Diamondbacks in Arizona for 4, so that's when it kind of gets a little rough again. But hopefully that little 3-game national series in San Francisco will give us a couple games to pat ourselves, because they have not been good this year. But we'll see what happens. Again, this is Baseball, anything can happen. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? Once again, I want to thank everybody for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you have any comments, pointers, tips, corrections, whatever, just let me know in any comments or reach out to me in some way. I truly appreciate any and all feedback. As I've said in each episode, and as I proved in the beginning of this one, I'm trying to learn as much as I can while I do this. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do my best to make the corrections after. And I'm just trying to give the best product that I can. All the sources for this episode today: Baseball Savant, ESPN, the ump scorecards, and then, of course, articles that I read in NBC Sports Bay Area by Alex Pavlovich and The Athletic by Grant Brisbee and Andrew Baggerly. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you again after our 4-game stint against the Cardinals. Peace.